All right, good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever time of day it is that you're watching this program. Welcome back to Philadelphia Eagles Talk with Geoff and Matt. Yes, I know and acknowledge that it's been a couple of weeks. We didn't do a show last week. We try to do a show every week. Last week's just didn't line up time wise, so wasn't a lot going on. This week was much more newsworthy in terms of the Philadelphia Eagles. So we're going to hit on a couple subjects today, and obviously, before we get started, thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, share, all those kind of fun things. And Matt, welcome back. I know it's been a couple weeks, so welcome back to the pod.
I was just noticing my beard is grayer, I think. So I got like a lot more gray hair in just like 1 week of shows.
I just shaved today, but I definitely have more whites coming in here. And as far as up here below the cap, that just disappears. Doesn't turn gray. It just leaves me forever. Anyway.
Still got mine.
Yeah, you still got a good head of hair. All right. So with all that out of the way, let's get into it. So a couple big time things. You don't hear from the boss. You don't hear from the owner that often with Eagles. He's the kind of guy that likes to stay behind the scenes, which I think is good. Certainly the polar opposite of Jerry Jones has got to go in front of the cameras after every Cowboys game. Lurie, you only hear from him usually just once, and it's usually at the owners' meetings where he goes out there and kind of gives a little sort of state of the union of the team and takes questions and stuff. And other than that, you may see him from time to time during the season when he's doing some charity events or whatever. He'll give a speech. But in terms of just being what Eagles related and talk about football only, this is the only chance you really hear from the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, who, by the way, is entering his 30th year as owner of the Eagles. And Matt and I have touched on this in the past podcasts. Probably most of these were probably when we were just in the audio format before we went to YouTube. But if, so some of you may be aware of our take on Lurie, but what a lot of certainly probably the younger Eagle fans don't understand or may not understand and be aware of is that Jeffrey Lurie saved the Eagles from moving to Arizona or California back in 1994 or 5 when you're up for sale. It was very heavily rumored that the Eagles, believe it or not, I know it's hard as it to believe that there would be a football team leaving Philly, but those were legit possibilities until Jeffrey Lurie came in and outbid everyone and bought the Eagles in 1995. And so, number one, credit to Lurie, even if he never won a freaking game under his ownership for the Eagles, saving the Eagles from leaving Philly, he already deserves major props. But how fortunate are we? And Matt, I don't mean to take a lot of time. We'll get to you in a minute here and get your take because I know you share a lot of the same thoughts. But but to also get an owner that is as really, really good as he is in terms of running a team, running a being able to hire the right coaches. I mean, he has not missed. You can call Chip Kelly a miss, but even Chip Kelly made the playoffs twice and won 10 plus games. But every single coach that he has hired has been successful.
Yeah.
So right there alone. Now he's also been to 4 Super Bowls, 2004, the first 2017, right? 2022, and then of course last year.
Yeah,
he's won 2, we lost 2, but 4 Super Bowl appearances. Now, Matt and I will tell you, we were approaching 50. In my case, I was approaching 50. Matt, early 40s, before the Eagles finally won a Super Bowl. And prior to that, I can't remember how old I was in 2004. I guess that was 20 years ago, right? So I was 30 years old. I was about 30 years old.
Yeah, I was 28.
So it was 30 years before I even saw the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Now, I know they were in the Super Bowl in 1980, but I was too young. I was 10 years old. I became an Eagles fan shortly after that. So I'd never seen the Eagles in a Super Bowl my entire life. Actually, in 1980, I was 7 years old, not 10 years old. So, there was a time when I didn't know if I'd ever see an Eagles in the Super Bowl or a win. And now we've got 4 appearances and 2 Super Bowl championships. And it's Jeffrey Lurie who really deserves the most credit, and it all comes down from the top. And he has run a very good organization from the top down. He's hired the right people. Yep. he's I'm trying to think what else I want to make sure I hit on. Matt, I'll just pass it over to you. Your thoughts on Lurie, and then we're going to get into actually what he talked about in his press conference.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, like over 30 years of owning the Eagles and going from Ray Rhodes to Andy Reid to Chip Kelly to Doug Peterson to really Sirianni, right? Was after Peterson. So like,
yep,
he studies other NFL franchises. So I think he takes a lot from the Steelers. He's not quite as solid as they are with just, well, don't change things up too often. Otherwise, you're going to screw your team. The Steelers are really the masters of that because they only hire a coach every 30 years.
They're really the outlier, the anomaly within the league. Yeah.
And at the same time, though, I remember everyone being so like, oh, this Hollywood guy, he doesn't know anything about football and all that. I'm like, yeah, he doesn't. He knows a lot now because he used the word growth mindset. And we'll get into that when we break down his speech. But that's why the organization is what it is, because he has a growth mindset. He brought that to the organization from top to bottom, including the Super Bowl, which is the competitive side of things. But then organizational wise, when he mentions words like mental health and mental wellness for like the staff and the players and everybody as part of the organization, I feel like he's one of the few owners that actually gets how to manage people today in today's workforce, whether it's staff or players. And the organization itself is set up to be probably one of the top organizations for the next 2 decades because of his leadership, right? So, and you can tell just demeanor wise and watching him speak the other day to the media, like he's on top of the world. Like he's proud of them winning the Super Bowl, but he's more proud, I think, every day of what the Eagles organization is and all the good that they do in Philadelphia, all the good that they do nationally when they're supporting a charity like autism. And he's found the right guys. You can tell he empowers his team to just do, his high profile management structure with Howie and Nick. Like he just talks highly of them. He always has talked highly of the coaches that he's always had. And when it's time to part ways, he doesn't throw them under the bus. He's not out there like Robert Kraft going to like masseuses and getting like 8-hour like tug jobs and stuff. I'm like, he's a legitimately good guy.
Actually, it's $50.
Yeah, right.
$50 hose.
And you look at some of the owners across the NFL, and there are some really good ones, like the Hunts that have owned the Chiefs for years. They're good people. The folks in charge of the Giants, they're good people. But you look at like Jim Irsay and stuff, and you're like, I don't know, like something greasy about that guy. Dan Rooney's a good owner, but he might be past his prime kind of thing with knowing how to, like, if you ask Steelers fans, they're like, he never fires anybody, so we're kind of done with him. But
we love Jerry, though. We hope Jerry stays forever.
We hope Jerry stays forever. And it's just funny listening to Jeff Lurie versus like a Jerry Jones. Like if you turn on Jerry Jones, you'd be like, well, I, me, I, me. Like Brian Regan used to say, like, oh, me monster. Like, me. And Lurie's just a down-to-earth guy doing a lot of good things with he's holistic in viewing the Philadelphia Eagles as an organization, but he doesn't want, the other words that he used was he wants to win big. So he wants to keep them competitive. And I've always said as an Eagles fan, since Lurie's owned the Eagles organization, and we watched years of shitty football. Like, really shitty football. A little bit of hope with the Buddy Ryan years, but then
bad ownership too. I mean, you got Norman Brayman who made the cardinal sin of letting Reggie White go, which was unbelievable.
No creativity whatsoever. It was just like, I'm not going to sign him. Like, absurd.
Yeah. And it wasn't just Reggie. He let Seth go.
Yeah.
Eric Allen. He let basically all those guys go that team was built on. After Buddy left, he just let them all go. It was like an open door. He's like, I'm not going to pay you. Sorry.
We went through both Detmer brothers as quarterbacks. We went through Bubby Brister. We went through Rodney Peete.
Matt, let's talk about real quick about our first Eagle game we ever went to, which was a treat by our father. For those who don't know, Matt and I are brothers, if that hasn't come across yet. Our first Eagles game was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in like 1987, 88, 89, something around there.
Freshman year of high school, I think. So it was 89.
Okay, 89. Yeah. So we went down to see, we were vacationing in Florida. And while we were down there, my dad surprised us and got us Eagles tickets. And so our first game ever was in Tampa to watch the Eagles play. Reggie White was in the game. Seth Joyner was in the game. The starting quarterback, who was it?
Brad Gable.
It was Brad Gable. That's who it was. Thank you.
Yeah, and we watched Vinny Testaverde and the Buccaneers. So the Bucs had drafted Vinny, so Vinny was in like his second or third year, still like a highly touted draft pick. Yeah. We did see Reggie play. We saw Byron Evans play. We saw most of that 46 defense that was left over from Buddy Ryan.
Yep.
But it was Rich Kotite's Eagles, I think. Wasn't Kotite the coach by then?
Yeah, it was Kotite. Definitely was Kotite.
Cunningham got injured. So Kotite was the coach.
Horrible coach. No quarterback. I don't even know, other than Reggie, who, by the way, to this day, Matt and I, Matt, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember yelling, because it was like before the game, I remember yelling to Reggie, just yelling his name out. And he looked up at the stands and gave a little gesture. Like, give us a little, and I was like, man, that's awesome, dude. Reggie White pointed to us. He heard. So that was like the highlight of the day, believe me, because the game was horrible. It was like
it rained cats and dogs.
Oh, at halftime, it absolutely freaking skies opened up and we got absolutely drenched.
Yeah. And we weren't on vacation. Dad flew us down.
Oh, okay.
Dad flew us down for the weekend, so we all had to get changed and get on a plane and fly back.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah.
All right. Like 7 p.m. But it was
soaked. And I mean, when I say the sky opened up at halftime, it freaking poured. Like you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you. That's how hard it was raining. We got absolutely drenched. So the second half, we're all soaked and watching this pathetic, horrible Eagles offense not be able to move, get first downs. I think the only score the Eagles had was a defensive touchdown by Seth Joyner. I think he ran a fumble back or something.
Yeah.
It was just a dreadful game. They ended up losing to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And Testaverde. But yeah, we're trying to get – so the whole point is, the reason why we're bringing that up is this is how bad the Eagles were when Matt and I really kind of, the genesis of being an Eagle fans. I was a little Eagle fan a little bit longer, Matt at this stage, but Cunningham got injured that year. This is the year he got hurt. First game of the season, I think. Bryce Pop, I think that was the year that he later. I can't remember. Anyway, Cunningham was
hurt. Game one. And so over 30 years, we had under Lurie's leadership for 30 years, there's been maybe 3 to 5 seasons at the most where they're like, Eagles have no chance.
Yeah.
35 out of 30. Every other coach, it was like, we have a chance at winning. Right? Ray Rhodes. I remember like Michael Haddix was the running back. Heath Sherman was something that you got excited about.
I always liked Heath, man. He was good for
they still think they got no offensive line. But then like when Ray Rhodes came, then they got Ricky Waters, and you're like, oh, that's a top. That's like an A.
Charlie Garner.
Yeah, and Garner, and all of a sudden things start to turn. John Gruden, of course, was the offensive coordinator under Rhodes. So you had all this positivity starting to come. And we have Bud Carson taking control of that defense. Yep. And there was some things to be excited about. And I'm like, and you never look back. You had, at the end of Ray Rhodes, you ran out of quarterbacks and you ran out of offensive firepower. Like nobody wanted to come play at the Eagles, probably because they were still playing in the vet. So one of the other most important things Lurie did was build the freaking link and got us out of the vet. Yeah. And because players weren't coming, man. They were not coming.
No, I mean, look what happened to Mike Quick and who was the other cornerback opposite Eric Allen who wrecked his knee also, the promising Ben Smith, who was destined for stardom and ended up wrecking his knee. So all these guys were going down all the time. So, yeah, Matt's right. Nobody wanted to play on that concrete surface.
No. And you get Andy Reid in there. He drafts McNabb, and they struggle through the Detmers at quarterback for a couple seasons. Doug Peterson playing quarterback the first season. Yeah. Irving Fryer catching like 1 touchdown that season. After like I remember like the Eagles receivers, I mean, for a couple of years, their top touchdown numbers were like 3, like combined. Like out of all the receivers and all the offensive snaps, they scored 3 touchdowns. That's so bad.
That's what happens when you have Todd Pinkston and Torrance Small and Hank Baskett and who else was there? Freddie Mitchell.
But they were competitive. After McNabb,
they were competitive because they had a really good defense. They had Trotter there. They had Lito and Dawkins. Sheldon and Troy Vincent and Brian Dawkins. They always had a good line with Hugh Douglas and who was the other guy on the other end there that was good for a few years? William Fuller.
Yep. They
Mike
jumped
Golick.
for all those years with Andy Reid, so they were competitive, and they had half fields for McNabb most of the time. Thank God, because they didn't have any wide receivers until T.O. showed up. But they were competitive ever since that era. Yep. Like you knew, like Eagles were expected to win almost every Sunday. So like, if they didn't win, you're like, that was disappointing. And then Andy Reid got stale. So like, for maybe the final year of Andy Reid, you're like, I don't know what's going on. The year that they traded McNabb away and went with Kevin Cobb, that was a disaster. Never turned out right. And then they sucked until they got rid of Andy. And then, they were competitive almost immediately again under Chip Kelly. And then Chip traded away all the good players, and then we sucked again.
Chip just for another couple of years he didn't get along with.
Sucked for another couple of years, but then they get Doug Peterson, who writes the shit. Carson Wentz was a big part of that. And, and things turned out the way they did with, Doug just kind of ran out of gas. I don't know. Like the whole Wentz thing kind of like, I don't know what happened.
I don't know. It was a combination of things. The team chemistry just ended up taking a big hit. And part of it was definitely because of Wentz, and Doug just wasn't able to kind of fix that ship. Once the Wentz thing blew up, Doug wasn't able to right the ship. And
and how he sniffed it out and was like, all right, I see the problem here. And then like Nick Sirianni is one of the highest winning coaches of his first 4 years in the league. So here we go again. We have another great 4 to 8 years of success. So, and that leads to getting into breaking down what he said. So like,
we can do the speech before, but I just want to, again, just kind of point the reason why we're bringing it up is because there's probably a good especially in, the year of the social media age where probably most of our YouTube audience is probably younger and don't remember those years where they've been born and raised being Eagle fans and seen most of these times being good and glory years, or either going to the championship or in the playoffs every year and going to the Super Bowl. I mean, took a long time to get there. And a lot of this is because of the culture and the organization and the smartness, intelligence of Jeffrey Lurie. So anyway, that being said, let's dive into the speech, like you said, Matt. So what are some of your takeaways? And then I'll get into mine as far as his speech overall. What are some of the things that I know you kind of mentioned them a little bit.
There were buzzwords. So buzzwords that I thought were important because, leadership and where I work we use the same words, growth mindset. Like you have to have a growth mindset. And that applies more and more with the younger generations that are coming up. Like they don't even know what it's like to not have a growth mindset. So you have to teach it. Like this is a growth mindset. You're going to lose, but you're going to learn when you lose. You're going to fail. And when you fail, you're going to learn. And then you're going to come back and you're going to learn to be resilient. And so growth mindset is that, right? And you can see it in the way that he runs things. That Howie Roseman is the perfect example of growth mindset. And he was kind of, put in prison by Chip Kelly because Chip Kelly had too much power. And Lurie was wise enough to say, that's not going to work. Howie's not the problem. Chip, you got to go.
But he did demote Howie, and they did put him back.
But he also allowed him the freedom to go learn.
Howie went to work. Howie didn't just sit there and mope. He knew that some of the things that he was doing wrong or needed to get better at. And Howie talks about it. I don't know if you've seen some of the times where he has, Matt, but Howie's talked about how he went on the road and he would travel to other teams and not only just football teams, but he would go to other leaders and businesses and organizations and really try to figure out what makes it tick and how they're successful.
So growth mindset was one. And when we've talked about the Commanders, and in the same time that Howie's learning, you had Vinny Serrato and people that were GMs of the Commanders that had no clue. They didn't care to study how to get better. They thought they knew everything, like Jerry Jones of the Cowboys, and they didn't bother to have a growth mindset. I already know it all. And I'm like, look where that got you. Finally the Commanders have turned it around, but Cowboys, you're stuck. You're still stuck until you find a growth mindset somewhere, and it ain't with Jerry.
Real quick, little tidbit here. The Cowboys, I think, made a good move today, and in my opinion, anyway. I don't know if you heard about it, Matt, but they traded for Joe Mixon, the backup quarterback of the Patriots, who was a guy that I think is really good, and I thought was going to actually potentially.
Throw off what names? I got to correct you. Not Joe Mixon. Joe Milton.
Milton.
Yep, that's right.
You.
You're probably earning more. Probably more people earning.
I'm good for one of those a show. Every podcast, there's I should have like an award. Eventually, we'll have like an award, and the first person that identifies a mess up, Matt will have to just bite his lip, and we'll have a contest. First one that catches me calling a player the wrong name, we'll get a prize. I'll figure it out what the prize is.
We're not talking about the running back of the Houston Texans.
No, damn it, Joe Milton. Yes. So anyway, what I was getting at was, I like Joe Milton. I remember watching him in in Indianapolis during the what do you call it? I can't even think. What's that?
Combine?
Yes, the combine thing. So during the combine, that guy was launching 75-yard passes like nothing. I mean, he's got a serious arm. And so I like the move by the Cowboys. I don't want to spend too much time on them, but I thought that was a good move for them. They need a backup quarterback, and I think that was a guy who was going to challenge Mayo maybe for the starting role. I really think that guy is a blue chip player, and I thought it was a good move by the Cowboys to get him. So sucks that he did. That's where he is. But anyway, I thought it was a good move. Sorry, I just totally sidetracked your conversation, bringing him up there, but continue on, please.
So growth mindset was one thing, win big was another. I'm like, their focus is on making sure that they stay competitive, and that's obvious in the 30 years that he's been here. And then he said a couple other things. He is not, he's so opposite of Jerry Jones. I remember when Jerry Jones won the first Super Bowl with the Cowboys after he fired Jimmy Johnson. Barry Switzer's holding his hand out there to shake hands with Jerry Jones, and Jerry reaches right past Barry Switzer and grabs that Vince Lombardi trophy and is like, look what I did. And I'm like, that's the entire difference right there. When Jeff Lurie starts talking about Eagles football, he doesn't even mention the players first. He mentions the structure of the organization, the people that are doing all of the support stuff. And when he breaks it down, he doesn't miss anybody. He's talking about the people that plan the transportation, the people that drive the buses, the people that fly the planes, the people that create the food. What's the fancy word for food? I can't. I'm brain farting on it.
Area
that starts with a C. Whatever. Somebody put it in the comments. I don't know. But just all the nutrition specialists, everybody. Like, he goes through the chain of just thanking everybody because he does really appreciate that. And I've not heard anybody have anything bad to say about the Eagles organization. Like, there's no employees that have ever been like, oh my God, it's a shit show. Like the Commanders were under Snyder. You heard it almost every week about, and it was coming from all areas, not just the cheerleaders that were complaining about all the sexual harassment stuff that was happening, but just miserable people that were like, this is a shit show of an organization. You just don't have that
happen. To your point, we'll take a recent case study. Look what just they did to a guy who they have brought into this organization twice, and both years they made it to the Super Bowl. And I'm talking about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. They interviewed him after he was traded. Now, he didn't want to be traded, and the Eagle fans, it wasn't a popular move. But Chauncey, when they interviewed him, he totally understands. And he's not happy that he's not an Eagle. I think he's okay going to where he's going to, because I think they gave, again, they must have talked to him and said, hey, listen, unfortunately, this is just a business move, and we got to move you. They give us some teams that you're interested in that you would play for. We're going to try to see if we can work something out, because he's okay with it. I mean, there's a guy that would talk back if he was pissed, that he would have no qualms about talking and throwing dirt at the Eagles.
Yeah.
But this is just a microcosm of the organization that Lurie runs. How many Eagle players rather have left the Eagles and have always talked highly once they've left the Eagles? Almost every single one. I can't think of any that had anything bad to say about the Eagles when they were either released, cut, traded, retired, what have you. So to your point, Matt, this is a organization that is well thought of throughout the entire league, both from the competitive, all their owners, and certainly the players or potential players that enter the NFL.
Yeah. And he, when he articulated breaking down Howie and trusting Howie, and this is what we've talked about before, like the Eagles are clearly light years ahead of other organizations that aren't thinking, what's the 3-month plan? What's the 6-month plan? What's the 24-month plan? What's the 36-month plan? And Howie's got it all figured out. And we already mentioned that Jalen Carter was the guy that all of these free agent moves are having to deal with. And when Lurie's, he's not mentioning him by name, but he's like, we know the future core players. We just got rid of Kelsey. Kelsey retired, BG's retired, Fletcher Cox retired. Who are the future of those folks? And they're like, they know Jalen Carter's one of them. So, he's like, you would love to sign everybody, but you just can't. And I think the Eagles are just really genuine and straightforward with everybody they talk to. And they know when they come in and sign a 1-year deal that I don't think they're giving any BS. Like, clearly CJ was not told, oh, prove it, and then we'll sign you to do a big deal. Nope. Otherwise, that would have ended badly. They were like, hey, come help us win a Super Bowl or bust. We can't guarantee anything after that, but we know you can help our team now. And CJ's like, I want to win a Super Bowl. I'll do that for a year. And no broken promises, right? So Howie's exceptional at that. I think Howie's so good that if you're a GM and Howie calls you on draft day, like you're gonna get pickpocketed. Like he's gonna make it sound professional, but he's not,
I know.
He's not gonna put the
they gotta be hesitant when they see that area code from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They must be like, man, should I answer it?
He's somehow able to turn these, like even getting out of the Carson Wentz deal we've already called it, like that is a masterclass right there of how to.
And Lurie deserves credit for too, because he had to eat at $35 million. How many owners that? Zero. He was
like,
the first.
How are the Browns? I would be on the phone with Howie, like, how do we do this? Like, how do we get out of Deshaun Watson? And they probably did. And Howie's like, well, I got a quarterback for you. But the problem is Howie didn't give him the quarterback that's going to win, like Tanner McKee. He gave him Kenny Pickett. And Pickett played well, but I'm like, McKee's the better quarterback. So Howie just makes genius moves all the time, and he's operating on ninja level. But the Eagles don't get caught off guard. They have a 3-year plan. They have a 1-year plan. They have a 2-year plan. They have a 5-year plan. And
and that's what Howie's learned, because Howie's obviously got a tremendous amount of experience, and he has also been kicked to the curb, like we talked about earlier. So he's learned through experience and his own self-learning and researching and meeting with other people and getting around the league and getting out there and putting the work in. That's why Howie's there. It just didn't happen overnight. He didn't wake up one day and become this great GM.
Now, with his whole staff of scouts, the whole scouting staff is just amazing. They're the best in football right now.
Yeah. And think about what happened last year. Here's another perfect example. They had a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator last year. How many teams win the Super Bowl after they have 2 coaches come in on both sides of the football? I don't know if it's ever happened. I got to look that up. I keep saying that, and I don't know if it's ever happened before. But that just, again, speaks to this organization. New coach on offense, new coach on defense, and they won a Super Bowl last year.
Yep. So, and he's just like I said, like he's in his happy place. Like he smiled through the whole press conference. He loves talking to the media. That's probably because he's got the West Coast LA thing going on and brought that over.
But he doesn't do it much, though. That's the thing. He does when he gets out there. It's not like he's timid. He'll go out there and shoot the shit with them and everything. But otherwise, he's always in the background. He's not out there in front of everybody, except for this time.
Yep. And you heard him back, Nick Sirianni. He's like, we got our coach for the next 4 to 8 years. Like we're really gearing up for another run at the Super Bowl because we like our structure. And Howie trusts Nick, and Nick trusts Howie, and Lurie trusts them both, and they all trust the owner. So I look around the league, and I'm like, I don't think there's another organization on their level right now, and that spells good success for the next decade.
Because to dive into that a little bit, because think about it, most GMs their job is not as secure as Howie's. Howie has earned his stripes. We talked about it already, so I'm not going to go back into it again. And he's obviously been doing a great job as well, so that helps. But Howie, what I'm getting at is Howie is able to have carte blanche. I mean, I'm sure he still covers it or says, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing." So now he ignores Lurie or keeps him out in left field with anything he's thinking about doing. But the point is that there's so many other GMs across the league that are going to be hesitant to make a trade or to draft this guy or to, sign this guy because they're worried about their jobs. Howie, he doesn't have to worry about that. Nope. And that's huge in terms of having that type of a leash from the owner to go out there and make things happen. I think that's an underrated factor here as far as why the Eagles are successful again. And so it's, but getting back to the press conference itself, one of the things that he also mentioned that I thought was interesting is how, again, this is very relevant right now compared to them letting everybody go that they did. But he's like, we had a saying. I won't name the company I worked for, but I worked for a company for 28 years, and one of the things that we had said in our organization was, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And his mentality is exactly the same. He doesn't say it that way, but he talked about planning, and he's always like, if you're not thinking ahead, then basically the idea is you're going to be behind. And so we said at work, it was always, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Same idea, same mentality. And the Eagles, they're always far ahead. Like, I know these people that we let go this year, tough to lose a Josh Sweat. It's tough to lose a Milton Williams. It's tough to lose these guys, But the Eagles knew this was going to happen, and they have been planning for it to happen. It's time for our youth, the guys that they've trusted in the draft picks, to come and step up, and they started doing it last year. I don't know if they would have maybe let some of these moves go. They probably still would have had to, but it's nice knowing that Nolan Smith took some huge strides last year. Jalen Hunt, who was supposed to be a project and maybe not get to this level that he's at right now till another year or so from now, he's already showing that this guy could be a potential player. I mean, think about how he's such a project. He's still a project. The guy has never played defensive end until this year. He was a linebacker or a safety in college. I think he's only
watch Nolan Smith just blow up and break tackles.
Yeah, Nolan Smith, all effort guy. We knew that he had the effort and all that, watching his highlights from Georgia, but we were, especially after the first year or so, I had started getting concerns about Nolan Smith. He was pushed around. He kind of just was like a speed guy. He did a lot of mumulas, where you just run to the outside and you just have the life tackle just push him, and you could go ahead. You could run as fast as you want. I'm just going to push you away from the quarterback. But he has learned to do a power rush now, and he still uses his speed, and he is relentless in the pass. I mean, he's like a Trent Cole. He reminds me a lot of Cole.
Yeah, except more athletic.
Faster than Cole was.
Yeah, faster and more athletic than even Trent Cole. Like he's going to be really exciting to watch next year. And it's because of him that Sweat is kind of an absorbable loss. If Smith did not come on, then maybe they do sign Sweat. Maybe he becomes the priority over Bond. But
Lurie. Hunt, I mean, if you're not impressed by what Jalen Hunt did when he started finally getting some more playing time when BG went down last year, Jalen Hunt stepped in, got some playing time. Again, this guy is so raw. And you watch him in the Super Bowl. Watch him in making those plays in the Super Bowl, man. He does not look like he just started playing defensive end. I mean, this guy, he could be a really, really good player. Who knows? I don't want to put too much on him. But from what I've seen from a guy who's just started playing defensive end, I was super impressed. And then Ajomo, again, watch him in the Super Bowl. Watch him when he was in there during the some of those games towards the end of the season. He's a guy that got penetration, plays physical at the line.
Yep.
I'm not going to put him in Milton Williams' category right now, but he definitely showed the potential. So anyway, getting back to Lurie, it's all about planning ahead. And so the Eagles had to make these tough decisions. And why? Because they know they got to sign Jalen Carter. They're going to have to sign Blankenship. They're going to have to sign Quentin Mitchell down the road, and N'Kobe Dean and some of these other young guys that are out there. So, and
we don't get caught on our heels. We don't get caught, reaching for stuff like we're pretty confident. Like as an Eagles fan, it's so cool to look forward to the next few seasons and be like, we're going to be competitive for probably the next 5 years at least. And plus they've got the right guy in Hurts. I totally see Hurts being a guy that will restructure contracts year after year, take signing bonuses, and let them sign and surround him with talent. Like Hurts is not going to have an ego that gets focused on him versus the team and the wins. Like when Hurts says, I just want to win. I want to win. I think he's going to do all the things.
It's genuine.
Required by a quarterback. He'll follow the Tom Brady method and say Brady won 6 because he kept restructuring and re-signing guys that he knew, that the Patriots needed to surround Brady with. So,
I mean, it helped that Brady was dating a model that was making more money than he was. So he really,
Yep. But
He
Hurts,
needs a big contract. But yeah, he's got some similarities. And the thing about Hurts is that he's now been to the top of the mountain. It'd be if he went to the Super Bowl again and lost. I don't care who you are, even as mentally strong as he is, it starts getting you back your head. Remember John Elway? I mean, he made those Super Bowls. He finally got over the edge, over the top, very late in his career, and he didn't even play well in that game, but he won. And then all of a sudden, he was considered one of the best, quarterbacks of all time. Hurts has now won a Super Bowl. He has done it, and so that's going to help his confidence. And he always seems to show up in big games. He plays his best in big games.
big
What
games.
more out of your quarterback?
And Jeff Lurie,
Especially against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I always got to put that disclaimer in there.
When Eagles fans complain about Lurie not knowing football, I'm like, you're way off on that too. And he's way ahead of other owners on it, because he's the one that, as the league, he explained very articulately, when the league starts to change, we look for vulnerabilities to exploit. And he's like, when the league went to, well, all of our RPOs were getting figured out. We got to the Super Bowl, but we couldn't win it with the RPO offense. So we blew that up, because the defenses were very, very successful against the passing game, because every other team is passing. So we went out and we signed Barkley, and we said, let's run Barkley behind these beasts. And not only that, but when they did adjust to stop Barkley, because they stopped him. He was like, we wanted to make sure that we had the talent that when that happens, we could still air it out. And, and like you said, Hurts has his best games when it gets put back on him. He doesn't even shake. Like it's like a really good structure. And then you look at what Lurie did after the Super Bowl. First guy they signed was Barkley. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for being awesome back. And here's 3 more years and a bunch of money, signing bonus money. So,
and then they re-signed Bond, who was the key out of all the departures or potential departures. He was the guy that was the most important. And the Eagles gave him the money. And these are 2 positions, we've talked about it, that the Eagles have never paid before. No. And now they've paid them both a lot of money. So the Eagles have been able to pivot when they need to, is your point, Matt, right?
Around the entire league, I think the only other team that kind of understands the run game like the Eagles do are the Ravens. They're like, we want a running back. We want hogs that can run it. When Lamar is not on his game, or when our offense is, we can chew up yards if we know how to run it. And all of those old school things. I mean, we grew up watching Bill Parcells whip up on the Eagles. Just O.J. Anderson, just hand him the ball. He's going to get 3 yards every freaking carry, and he was never going to get stopped for a 1-yard gain.
Hampton.
Yeah. Even before Hampton, Joe Morris. Like, you couldn't stop the time of possession that they had under Parcells. Was like mind-blowing. We're like, we just played a half hour. We played a half, 2 50-minute quarters, and we had the ball for like 6 minutes. And the Giants had it for like 23, 27 minutes, like 24 minutes, right? So you're like, the Eagles pretty much did that all season long, right? And we've been, I know I've been saying it since that bye week, of just commit to the run, make sure you take care of that. We can probably win every game that way until the passing game comes along. Luckily, the passing game came right along in the Super Bowl. But
I'm glad you brought that up, because he also said, he mentioned in a press conference about the bye week. Somebody asked him about the bye week and how they got together. And he said, look, we got together organization. We're like, man, we are a way better football team than we're showing out there. What the heck's going on? They had one of those sort of powwow, look in the mirror, look, let's figure this out. Like, again, it was a collaborative setting. They were like, look, we are not a 2-2 team, guys. What's going on? And let's figure this out. And they lost 1 game. And even Lurie mentioned it. He's like, the only game we lost was when we lost Hurts in the first quarter. Otherwise, they went undefeated after the bye week.
Yep. And they didn't point fingers. They just looked in the mirror, like you said. So that's the organization they have. If Eagles fans that don't know the history want to go back, just watch any of the 80s Eagles football. And you'll
entertaining football. Was not, definitely entertaining.
Yeah.
Was it Ty Detmer or Coy Detmer that taunted Brett Favre?
That was Coy. Coy Detmer could actually, what was the problem with Coy was he'd throw touchdowns, but he'd throw the equal amount of interceptions. Like,
he was the best fake field goal back flipper passer I've ever seen.
Yeah. I loved his attitude, though. Coy Detmer had an attitude of like,
He did have an attitude, but he didn't have much ability.
No, he had the Detmer ability, but he got injured, and then McNabb came in once he injured his elbow, and that never looked back. But
yeah,
he was the better Detmer, if you ask me, ex-Colorado Buffalo. But I don't know. The primed Jeffrey Lurie's conference was awesome. Pretty cool to hear because it reminds you, like, yeah, we're really primed to win for another 3 to 5 years.
Yeah,
unless something significant goes off, but like, no, we've already got the plan for 5 years out. So
they already planned. Then like we've talked about, we're going to start diving into the draft in our future podcasts here as we get closer to the draft at the end of this month. We're really going to focus on that over the next upcoming podcast. So again, like and subscribe. Make sure you're part of the show, because they've got 21 draft picks in the next 2 drafts right now, and that's another whole year to go. We'll see if they're going to, what they'll do next year to even add to that. But right now, they got 21 picks over the next 2 years, and 17, I want to say, of the picks are in the first 5 rounds.
Yeah,
17.
that's awesome.
So they're gonna retool, but they don't retool and go 5 and 12.
No,
this is like I said, I mentioned this last week or last podcast that they're going to probably take a step back defensively because of how many people they lost. They lost quite a few, but I don't see him taking a giant step back. I still think they're going to have a good defense and certainly good enough to win. That's my expectation.
The guys that are filling those gaps are all young players that we are waiting to see anyways. And they just couldn't get on the field yet because these other players were exactly what they were supposed to be.
Yep.
So, like, Owen Smith is only going to get better. Sidney Brown, how much time does he get playing safety or somewhere else? Right. Maybe like a joker linebacker himself. Like, lots of pieces for Fangio to work with. And we'll see how it all plays out. But
so the other piece is going to kind of blend in to the other topic of conversation that I wanted to talk about, and that is the Tush push. Now, Lurie is defending the Tush push as you would think he would, because his point is like, listen, this is a play that we've spent a lot of time figuring out, putting the work in to be as successful as they are on the Tush push. Lurie is sort of lobbying as many other owners because they're voting on it. They were going to vote on it on Tuesday, and this is when it gets a little concerning to me, because there's no doubt in my mind that Roger Goodell wants to ban this play. And the reason why I say that is that's the reason why they put it on the table. They pushed it down the road. They kicked the can because he wanted to kind of like see where they were, where like he kind of gauged where this vote's going to be. And it ended up being, reports are that it's a 16-16 split. So it's like right down the middle. And so they need 8 more, and they need 75% of the owners to pass any new, rule or whatnot.
Yeah.
So I think Goodell wants this play banned, and I think that's why he pushed it down, because it's going to take more time for him. Like, I think Goodell's going to be out there now trying to round up these other 8 owners to get this play banned. That's just my opinion. It's
Lurie's
my take on what he said. Lurie's case is like, listen, man, this is a play that, because I guess, they said that the main issue is, or one of the issues that I think at Green Bay Packers are the one that kind of like made this proposal for this change or to ban it, is like, well, it's an injury concern. And Lurie's like, there's just no data that backs that up, that that this is an injury risk type of play. It's just the data doesn't support it. So what's the other reason? Because it can't be injuries. He even said, like, listen, I voted for, or we as an organization, his vote. He voted against, what was the play that he said that he voted against? It was one of the recent injuries. I forget which one it was. Anyway, you don't recall from watching it.
No.
One of the most recent rule changes, Lurie said that he voted for, again, it had to do with player safety.
Yeah, but he votes always for player safety.
Right.
Like, player safety rule and the stats are there. He's like, yep, we're all for it because we don't want our players.
Right, that's what I'm trying to make, but I couldn't remember what his specific example was. Anyway, you can watch the press conference yourself. But anyway, so Lurie's like, listen, I'm all for player safety, but and there's no data to back up that this is an unsafe play. And he goes, in fact, I believe that one of the reasons why that they have the kind of two guys hover in and do the kind of push together is they are almost given a protective shell around Hurts. So he says it's safer than your normal everyday quarterback sneak. So he made that point. So I thought it was interesting that Lurie was pushing back on the potential ban. But I just have this feeling, it's just my gut feeling, that Goodell wants to get this banned. Now, it's not that bad of an idea overall. I don't like the fact that they're just doing it mainly because I think the injury is just a front. This injury concern is a front. I just think that the other owners it's just sour grapes, man. They know they can't stop it. They can't do it as well, and so they just want it banned. That's what I think is the real reason behind these teams wanting to ban it.
So like work harder and figure out a way to stop it.
Yeah, they don't want to put in the time in, right? Or like they don't have the players to do it. That's the other thing.
Yeah, and it's like, no, you guys are going
to penalize the Eagles.
Right now, Howie's thinking about his next 3 years, and it's Thursday night going into Friday, and on Saturday and Sunday, he'll still be thinking about what needs to be done to fix the team and make it better. And the whole organization thinks that way. And these other folks go home on a weekend and they go sail yachts and have fun and golf and do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, that's the easy way is to just ban it. Oh, it's terrible. I'm like, no, it's not terrible. Quarterbacks get injured when they're scrambling and then they get concussed because somebody hits them or their head hits the ground, Like they're not from tush push. Nobody gets injured on the tush push. Yeah. We were worried about Kelsey for years. We're like, well, I don't know, but he never got hurt on a tush push.
No, he didn't. And Juergens did all last year. He never got injured. Knock on wood. And Hurts, knock on wood, never got injured. So one of the things I wanted to mention though, because I guess for some reason this is one of the other things that I heard coming out of these meetings. Like the owners are trying to figure out why did we make this rule change to begin with? Because apparently, like in 2005. Is when they suddenly made it okay to push, players. Like, I'm not talking about quarterback necessarily, but like say, the quick out pass or whatever, and the players all get together and there's like a fight between one or two tacklers, and then you see the offensive lineman come in and push the guys forward. Yeah. I guess back from
probably
2005 previous to that,
big quarterback lost a big game in the playoffs, and they're like, we need to change stuff.
So they ended up, but they couldn't. Apparently, the owners couldn't figure out why they made the change. Like, no owner said, oh, yeah, we made that change because of X, Y, Z. Nobody stood up and said it. So there's like, I guess they all came to a meeting like, why the hell did we even, like, they couldn't remember why they changed that rule. Because I guess there was a rule at one time where you could not push a player with the ball anywhere. Like, it was against the rules. So, again, to the Eagles' credit, they found a little hole, I guess, if you will, in this in being able to design a play where you can basically produce an unstoppable play for a first down, and they deserve credit for that. So
sour grapes
to me is
teams that lost.
I'll be okay. I guess I'll be able to live if they do end up banning it. I don't want them to just ban the tush push. I'd rather, and this is what they're kind of talking about, I will be able to live with the fact that if they end up going back to the previous 2005 rule where they can't push anybody. Remember the play last year when Devontae Smith caught the ball and he was stuffed up in one of those groups, and then some offensive lineman on the defensive lineman on the Saints came in and freaking clobbered Smith and cussed him. Yeah, then that certainly could be considered a increased potential injury issue. So if they're going to just go back to 2005 and say no player on the offense can push any other player who's got the ball, if they're going to make that rule, I'll live with it. And that'll include banning the tush push, obviously.
They probably made that rule to equate the defense. The defense can gang tackle anybody, and they never ruled that only one person can tackle the ball carrier.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
That rule to say, well, if you guys have a gang tackle or have four guys trying to tackle my running back, then when my offensive line catches up to my running back, that they should be able to shove the pile. Yeah. That's probably
that's it. Yeah, that makes sense.
So stop with the sour grapes.
Yeah, so it's either just shut up, stop whining, try to figure out how to stop it, or try to figure out how to do it yourself.
Yeah,
but and Lurie stood up for the Eagles, and Lurie's got a lot of power. He's been like we're talking about. He's been around 30 years. He's got a lot of. He's one of the more. I don't want to use the word powerful owners, but he's got a loud voice. I guess he's got an influential voice out of that ownership group. And so we'll see. Will they get 8 more? I know, to me, when I watched Goodell, I don't know if you saw this, Matt, but Goodell came out and talked about, they asked him about the Tush Push ban, and he started, again, talking about, well, we're concerned about player safety and blah, blah, blah. Total BS. So, but you could just tell that he's not on the side of the Eagles. Like, I can tell that he wants this thing banned, and usually Goodell gets what he wants. So that's why I'm thinking that he's going to somehow round up 8 more owners and get it banned. We'll see. I wanted to make it a topic of conversation because it includes our team. So, and Lurie brought it up in his press conference as well. So that's my thoughts on the ban. I mean, Matt, you obviously injected what you think as well. Do you have any other additional thoughts on the Tush Push?
No, that's it.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. They're going to vote again when they convene again at the end of May. I guess all the owners get to get together again. And I have a feeling that is when, I think they're going to be able to get 8 more owners, because there's probably some that are on the fence. You think about the ones at the Eagles. The Eagles do have some like allies around the league, because think about how many former coaches that were on the Eagles are now head coaches on other teams. So there's some influencers when, think about John Gannon in Arizona. Think about what's his name in Indianapolis, right? Steichen. Think about Moore now with the Saints. I mean, he's obviously going to be pro Tush Push. So the Eagles have some allies out there. Will they be able to get 8 more against it? We'll see. But I have a feeling though the owner, the commissioner Goodell is going to try to get 8 to convince him to vote against it. But we'll see.
I don't think he gets 8.
It's a lot.
I think that vote fails again.
Again, if you have traditionalist coaches, or maybe not, maybe it's not even the right word, but just competitive coaches that don't want to just be like, that should be like, listen, I'm a competitor. I'd rather just try to figure out how to stop the play than, let's just get rid of it. Because think about it. As them, if they're looking in the mirror as a coach, well, what does that say? Let's say the Chicago Bears come up with some awesome play from Caleb Williams and whatever, some of the players that they have, and they are successful with it, and it's tough to stop. What, are you going to have another, off season when all these owners get together and go, oh, we don't think that play should, be allowed?
Right.
And then make up some excuse because they think it's an injury risk.
I thought
no data to support.
Lurie's best point on that was there was a day when they thought the forward pass was the end of all of the American football. And now all everybody wants to do is throw the ball deep down the field and score points. So it is like the running game had to make a resurgence against that. And, Lurie's right. Like, Lurie's right on that entire argument. So figure out a way to stop it. Stop complaining until you do, or draft yourself a quarterback that can squat 600 pounds and do the same.
Build the line of a bunch of behemoths like the Eagles have.
Yeah. Stop overpaying guys.
Yeah, you can do it if you put the work in and you draft the right players. Any team can build a line that the Eagles have. Maybe they can't find a quarterback that squats 600 pounds. That's tough to do. Yeah. But the idea is, what are you going to penalize every team that comes up with some new scheme? Going forward that teams struggle to stop. Eventually, teams will figure it out. Now, one of the best points, I have to say this, one of the best counterpoints that I've heard to the Tush Push is that the offense is able to push, but the defense can't.
But why? Like, how are they not allowed to push? Like, who can tell?
Well, they do call it. Think about all the field goal attempts where
you
can't jump on a guy's back, or you can't push or get an edge of any way, any shape or form. So they do call it a lot on defense. But when you're talking about stacking the lines, I'm just saying, when they're talking about stacking up the lines and the entire defense and the linebackers, they can't push their D-line guys in front into the path. They're not able to do it. But the Eagles, from an offensive side, or anyone running the play, not just the Eagles, the Bills, or whoever else runs it, they're able to push on their side. That is probably, to me, more than the stupid injury, whatever. To me, that at least, I think, has a point.
I've never seen a flag thrown. They're like, so the same people that are complaining about that are like, well, it's a rugby play. I'm like, well, it's not, because if it was, you would have defensive players pushing against that. Right. So if it is, then that means, yes, Which I would agree with. Yeah, if you're going to compare it to a rugby play, that's because nobody's throwing a flag on a defensive player pushing a defensive player. They've thrown it because of defensive player line up in the neutral zone, and they've negated it there. But I've never seen them throw a flag because when that ball gets hiked, it's color versus color, and everyone's pushing everybody. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. I got to take a closer look because that's a great counterpoint to my counterpoint that I just made. And it's not my counterpoint. It's just somebody that I heard talk about that wants to play band. And I was like, all right, that actually is like a reason to maybe, because it's kind of a disadvantage for the defense. But I can't say that I watch the defense. I'm always watching the Eagles to see if Hurts is going to get the first down or whatever. I'm not really paying as much attention, but I think you're right. And if I was to watch those plays, I bet you the linebackers are pushing.
Everyone's pushing.
And
there's the line of scrimmage, and everyone's pushing.
Yeah.
Everyone is pushing against that as soon as the ball is hiked.
Yeah, so that's true. I think you're right.
I've never seen a flag thrown other than neutral zone infraction or offsides.
Or the guy in Washington kept jumping over the line.
Yeah, offsides.
Yeah.
So it's like that's a bunch of like again people pounding fists and being angry and crying over spilled milk.
They can't stop it. Yeah.
No, they can't. And it's not because of the play itself, because otherwise everyone would be successful at it. So stop with the crying. Josh Allen's one of the biggest quarterbacks in the league.
Yeah.
He can't do it.
Right.
So
it's
bullshit. The whole thing is bullshit. The Tush Push ban is shouldn't even be a topic. So
yeah, but it is why I'm talking about it, because it's going to be up for vote again in May, and I could tell the commissioner's not for it, and that concerns me because the commissioner usually gets what he wants, and we'll see. Hopefully, there's enough coaches out there that convince their owners not to vote for it to go, just because there is no competitive indifference, or it's just something that the Eagles are good at that you're not. So
it's 11 guys running into a pile.
Deal with it,
Yep.
Go draft yourself a behemoth and Mailata and Lane Johnson, and and then get a quarterback that can, I mean, I'm not a fan of the play, quite honestly. I'm not a fan of the play. I don't think it should be banned. But you've heard me. I'm like, give the ball to Barkley. How many times have I said that? My God. I would much rather them hand the ball to Barkley, because to me, they would still score a touchdown. But it's more of a guarantee for sure. Less chance of a fumble, and I get that with the exchange and all that. So it's a safer play, and it's one that can't be stopped, where maybe Barkley might get stopped every once in a while because it is a handoff and could have somebody penetrate through the line and stop them and that type of thing. But I wish they would run it. I guess I'll just say this. I wish the Eagles didn't run it as much as they did, but they didn't run it as much last year, and they actually weren't as good. And Lurie actually said, we didn't do it as well last year. So he's like, we actually didn't even execute it as well this year than we did the previous year. So
if you ban the Tush Push, you're one step closer to complete flag football, because the next argument will be like, well, why can 4 of your guys tackle my ball carrier? That's an unfair advantage.
Yeah.
First guy that makes contact, take him down. Otherwise, can't touch him until that guy's free of contact.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Barkley will have 62 touchdowns next year. Like, so don't go down that road and don't play flag football. Just let it be.
Yeah.
Eagles aren't going to run it forever. They're not going to be able to run it forever. So let it be.
All right, so here we go. We're going to give ourselves a homework assignment for next podcast, which hopefully will be next week. We'll try not to do one every 2 weeks. I'd rather not do that. But let's both dive into the draft. I don't know if you were able to get any of your I know you usually do some of the subscriptions and do some draft analysis. I don't know are they even out yet? They probably are out.
Yeah, they're out.
Yeah, so I got to. So we're definitely gonna have one. We're gonna bring on Johnny Flowers, a good friend of the program, and Evan as well, who actually watches a lot more college football than I do. So they're gonna have some insight to bring. We're gonna have some upcoming draft shows, is what I'm talking about. We're gonna really get into the draft. But Matt, just when you find some time, I know both of us are limited on time, but let's start zeroing in on the draft so that we'll probably make the next couple of podcasts here totally draft focused, and because the draft is coming up. When is it? The last week of April? So what, we're like 3 weeks out?
Yeah, it's usually around the 20-something, 24th or 25th. So
it'll be here before we know it. So for the programming notes and for the audience out there, We're going to be talking about the Eagles draft and who we like as prospects, who we think will be there when Eagles pick. What do we think Howie's strategy will be when it comes down to the end of the first round? Will the Eagles move up? We think we'll move back. Will they stay at 32 and make a pick? We're going to start diving into all that. So looking forward to that. Matt, any closing comments, and we'll wrap it up.
No, I'm tired. I want to go to bed.
It is late on the East Coast. All right, folks. Thanks again for watching Philadelphia Eagles Talk with Geoff and Matt. We'll be back next week with another podcast. And like I said, we'll start focusing in on the draft now. So make sure you come back for that. Till then, until next time, remember, we're Super Bowl champs. Like, always point the wrong way. There we go. It's like opposite of where I am. Fly, Eagles, fly. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks again for tuning in.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.